joining us now, ranking member of the House Armed Services Committee, Democratic Congressman Adam Smith of Washington.
Thank you so much for being with us, Congressman. It's good to see you again. You know, one of the things that was striking about the Washington Post article is how the head of the Armed Services Committee in the House and the head of the Armed Services Committee in the Senate, both Republicans, standing shoulder to shoulder with their Democratic ranking members on this. Can you explain to Americans watching right now why it is that Republicans and Democrats alike are so disturbed by the news coming out of this Washington Post report?
Sure. I mean, it's sort of three levels to it. One is just the specifics of it. If it happened the way the Washington Post reported, and you laid out a series of people explaining it at least as well as I could, then this is clearly a war crime. And clearly something we should not do. You do not execute survivors who are no longer a threat. Everybody understands that. So just the shocking nature of this allegation and the fact that to date, no one in the Pentagon has specifically denied it. You know, they've talked around it in 1,000 different ways, but nobody has said, no, that did not happen. Here's what did happen. So that's number one. Number two is that the Pentagon under Hegseth has had an attitude that the law doesn't apply to them. All right, they can do whatever they want to do. I mean, start with it. It seems like a minor thing. He's not the Secretary of War. He's the Secretary of Defense. The law is very clear on that point. And they've changed the whole thing as if the law doesn't matter. Over and over and over again, Pete Hegseth, they've fired judge advocate generals. They've fired inspector generals. You go back to what Secretary Hegseth wrote about before he was the Secretary of Defense. His contempt for the law, his contempt for JAG officers permeates this entire thing. And of course, within this administration, as you reported earlier, you know, defying judge orders, there's an attitude about the Trump administration that says the law doesn't apply to them. And that's alarming to Republicans and Democrats. And third, this Pentagon has basically told Congress, we don't have to tell you things. And look, I don't want to get into the weeds and the details of how oversight works, but this Pentagon is worse than anyone I've dealt with, and I've dealt with a lot, on basically saying, we're not going to tell you. To date, we still don't have the basic intelligence that forms the reasons for why they think these cartels are central to what they're doing. They're not providing that. And Republicans, they want to do their job in Congress too. And this Pentagon has said, we're not going to let you. So that's why you have a bipartisan pushback on this particular issue.
Right. And people need to understand this is such a break from tradition. I served actually with a congressman of the Armed Services Committee hundreds of years ago. But whether it was a Democratic president that we were in the middle of impeachment proceedings with or a Republican president, they immediately would send David Ignatius, generals, admirals, lawyers, you name it. The Pentagon would send people over so the House Armed Services Committee and Intel committees would have all the information they needed. Can I see David Ignatius for a second? When I reference his name, let's see David for a second. And David, there he is. David, welcome to the show. You know, what's so interesting, what Congressman Smith said was, we don't have any denials right now from the Pentagon. In fact, the most unserious of responses came last night when he's being accused by Fox News legal analysts of war crimes or worse, possibly murder. His response to whether it's Andy McCarthy, conservative stalwart, or Jack Goldsmith, conservative advisor in the Bush administration, is to send out a mocking cartoon, which I just need to explain for people that are viewing right now, something that we've talked about for months now. Pete Hegseth is not only not popular in the United States Senate among Republicans in the House, he's not popular inside the White House. They don't like him, and they haven't liked him since he lied to them during the transition process. So David, give us your overview of everything that's happened, and then please ask the congressman a question.
Yes. So first, I should say I've been hearing since last summer from people who were in the Trump Pentagon that Secretary Hegseth's days are numbered. They predicted that he would be gone by January or February because he just has had so much difficulty managing the Pentagon and the military. We'll see whether that holds true. But what's ahead, Joe and Mika, is a very detailed legal argument. I mean, Hegseth is not going to be able to escape this simply with blanket claims. There are too many other people whose careers are at risk. The commander, Admiral Mitch Bradley, I believe is his name, who gave the final order to take out the 2 surviving people on that boat on September 2nd, says that he was following an oral order, not a written order, but an oral order by Secretary Hegseth. There'll be a recording of that, and he'll require that that be produced. There will be discussion as to whether he, Admiral Bradley, was acting independent of the authority that Secretary Hegseth had issued. Every detail of this will be subject to analysis because people's careers all the way down the chain are going to be at risk because of the result. So I think that's a first thing to bear in mind. In terms of where this is going, I think anytime you have bipartisan focus on an issue like this, and I want to direct this to Congressman Smith, you begin to get the process of accountability that your committee, other key committees in Congress are all about. And I wanted to ask you whether in the days preceding this big explosion that we're all talking about, you and your committee have been receiving any indications from commanders, from serving officers about their concerns that they don't have good legal advice to distinguish between what are lawful legal orders and what aren't.
Yeah, no, we have. This has been a concern since this operation started. And keep in mind, it was conceived of in July, launched in early September. Congress wasn't briefed on this until late September, well into October. So, yeah, those concerns are rampant, but let's not lose track of who's really responsible for this. I am no fan of Secretary Hegseth, but he is exactly the Secretary of Defense that President Trump wants. Let's not forget that. He wanted a Fox News personality to go out there and talk tough and not ask questions to anything that Trump ordered him. Yeah, you can fire Pete Hegseth, but there's a lot that has to change within the White House. And let's just get to the fundamental issue. What are we doing down there? I mean, double tap, illegal strike notwithstanding, if the whole purpose of this is this scourge of drugs, this scourge of cocaine that's coming into the U.S., and then, as you mentioned earlier, the president pardons a convicted drug dealer from Honduras. He's saying we have to put pressure on Maduro because Maduro is under indictment in the U.S. Well, you got a guy who isn't just under indictment. He's been convicted, and the president pardons him. Is this really about drugs? Or is this about Donald Trump's 19th century way of looking at the world that he wants to bring the Western Hemisphere to heel? And not to tie it all back, but even going to Ukraine. Why does Trump want to give Ukraine to Putin? Why did he put that Russia peace deal on the table? He's taken us back to spheres of influence. All right. And this is so bad for the country. It is certainly ignoring the rule of law. But this global approach to politics and foreign policy is making our country less safe in a profound and lasting way. And that has a lot more to do with how bad a job Pete Hegseth is doing.
Ranking member of the House Armed Services Committee, Democratic Congressman Adam Smith, thank you very much.